Welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Welcome to the Financial 101 and Membership Overview at selected colleges. We are just waiting for some of our participants to sign on. Okay, the count of participants joining us is still climbing, but we're starting to see a little bit of a plateau here. And in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Katie Zellner, and I work here at RaiseMe, and we are very enthused to see all of the interest that we've heard from parents and students who are joining us today on this webinar. The format is that we're going to do a quick overview of some basic financial aid principles led by my colleague Shannon from Carnegie Mellon. And then we're going to jump into an overview of micro scholarships, which I will lead, and then we'll open up to questions from you all. So throughout the presentation, we invite you to ask questions using the Q&A function that you'll see in the ribbon at the bottom of your screen. And you can also use the chat function if that's preferable to you, but I will first look at the Q&A and the chat second. I have a few colleagues from RaiseMe who are helping me monitor, so if you hear from Isha or Cece during the presentation, they're here to help you answer their questions as well. Yes, I believe all attendees are muted, so if there are dogs in the background, then you'll be safe. So to kick us off, I'm going to have a quick poll to get a sense of who we have here with us today. So please go ahead and report back if you are a high school student, community college student, a parent, an educator, and what grade you're in. RaiseMe is all about getting students to think about college and plan for college throughout their journey, whether that's 9th grade or community college. And so we're eager to hear from everyone. And we have almost everyone having voted. We're at 80% participation. So I'm gonna quickly share the results so we can all see. Most folks on the line here are high school students. We have about 15% of the folks are parents joining us today. And we have a combination of students with spread across 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, with a majority of our audience, 56%, heading into the 12th grade. And then final question, we're going to go to the second question here, and this will just help get a sense of what your level of understanding and comfort is with the financial aid process. So please go ahead and take a couple moments to check the boxes that really kind of match your understanding of where you need to get started in order to complete the FAFSA and to get ready to afford college. I'm very impressed with everyone's participation today. We have about 75% of the audience participating. So thank you for being wonderful audience members. Go ahead and share that result with you. So we can see from these results that some folks have taken the basic step of just figuring out what needs to be done to complete the FAFSA. A handful of folks are talking about tax returns with their parents. A small group know what the CSS profile is. And a lot of us understand kind of the basic principles of financial aid being tied to families' ability to pay. And many of us are just starting and beginning to collect knowledge on this topic. And that's why you're here today. So we're gonna address all of these themes today. And with that, I wanna jump right into the content and turn things over to my colleague, Shannon, who will give us the Financial Aid 101.
Yes, thank you very much, Good evening, everybody. My name is Shane McCullough. I work in the Carnegie Mellon Office of Undergraduate Admissions. We also do financial aid for incoming students. So I'll be giving you your financial aid 101 today. So first, I want to just put out some things to remember. Every college is a little bit different, right? So you can think of different colleges and universities as businesses, right? They have different financial aid budgets. They allocate the funds that they do have in different ways. Some have a need-based financial aid model. Some have a merit-based financial aid model, whether it's based entirely on need. Some have a mix of the two. But I just want to stress that with any college or university you're interested in, you talk to the financial aid office for the full perspective, right? So sometimes it is the admissions office, like in our office as well. Sometimes it's an entirely different office, but everybody's going to do things a little bit differently. And this is a hard topic, right? So definitely dive into it, ask as many questions as you can, because I've been doing this for a while now and I still have questions, right? So definitely reach out to these places. So yeah, so if you prepare to apply for financial aid, it'll go a lot smoother, right? When I was thinking about college or when I was applying for my financial aid, my parents dropped some tax documents, some random tax documents in front of me and said, here's your first test, go ahead. It doesn't have to be that sort of complicated. It can be a little smoother. Right, you want to first review all the schools that you're thinking about applying for financial aid. You want to review their application process, right? Some will be very similar, and then you can get the same documents to repeat over and over again, but you want to make sure that you're aware of the timelines and the deadlines that you have. Some schools have very hard deadlines, some schools have soft deadlines, and it really depends school to school. I suggest making a chart of them. That way, you know exactly when you need to get things in and how. Right? The earlier you start it, the more time you have to submit documents that you missed, to fix any mistakes, anything about that. A lot of times too, you are going to need tax documents, probably very close to 100% of the time. So make sure you have a conversation with your parents about submitting their taxes. Sometimes things happen, life gets in the way, but you are going to probably need these things in order to apply for financial aid. You want an estimate, right? You want to be able to sit down and have conversations about the financial status. You don't want any surprises, right? So you can do a couple of these things ahead of time to sort of grease the wheels or the gears in order to make applying for financially a lot smoother. A very important piece in all of this is net price calculators, right? So colleges are usually required by law to have one, right, on their website, depending on which documents they bring in. This is a good way of seeing sort of what it would cost your family in particular. There's going to be a chart that I think is one of the most important things of my section of the presentation, which sort of breaks it down a little bit. The sticker price that you see isn't always the price that you're going to pay or your family's going to be required to pay, right? So these net price calculators give you a pretty good idea, or pretty close idea for most people, what you're going to qualify for. And it's a good way to start the conversation with your family as well and say like, hey, this is probably what it's going to look like. Or when you call up to the financial aid office, this is what I received. Did I put everything in right? And then continue the conversation from there.
Next slide.
So one big thing that a lot of colleges are going to need for financial aid is the FAFSA, right? So the FAFSA is a free application and is required to receive federal grants and loans, which a lot of schools are going to be giving out as part of their financial aid package. It is really a free application. So if you go to a website and they're trying to say, pay this amount of money and this is how you submit the FAFSA, anything of that nature, we'll fill it out for you. Those are separate services. You should be able to fill it out completely on your own, and it is free. The IRS data retrieval tool helps a lot of families fill out the FAFSA a lot easier, right? A lot of people can put in some tax information, sometimes your social security number. There's a couple of different things that they ask for to identify you, and then it fills out a lot of the FAFSA with the information the IRS has on file. This can also streamline troubleshooting because sometimes you might put in an extra zero if you're doing it yourself. Or there's federal verification that it happens sometimes, and it makes it a lot easier if you're getting the information directly from the IRS. Also, There might be additional requirements for financial aid to apply. Some schools will only have the FAFSA, but some schools like Carnegie Mellon and others you see here might need the CSS profile as well. So CSS profile is like the FAFSA, except it asks a little bit different questions, and it's a different way to assess a family's economic readiness. You should double check when you're making your list at the beginning, right? You're trying to prepare for applying for financial aid. See which colleges need what, right? You will put the CSS profile in. It's $25 for the first college, $16 for each additional one. You can be eligible for fee waivers. Call ahead and ask. And you will be required, though, with this, there is no IRS data retrieval tool you can use. So you'll have to manually enter your tax and asset information, and then you will be asked to upload certain tax documents. So having everything together, a lot of the stuff will be on the tax doc, all the stuff will be on the tax documents, and a lot of them will be from the FAFSA as well. So you might want to knock all this out in one sitting. Now, this is the most, if you don't listen to anything else that I say in this entire presentation, this is what you should look at, right? So a lot of times when you see the price of the institution, they'll have what we call the sticker price. They'll say, this is how much it costs. But that isn't always the price that each individual family is going to pay. As you see here, it's broken down into three-ish sections. The price that you're generally going to pay is the net price, right? So overall is the sticker price. When you fill out the FAFSA and CSS profile for need-based financial aid, they're going to assess what your family can pay, right? So those are the out-of-pocket costs, right? Sometimes those can be outside scholarships can be put towards there, cash payments, private loans. There's a bunch of different ways that that is paid, but that's something that's usually expected from your family. And then there'll be some loans sometimes. There's different types of loans. There's a subsidized loan, which the federal government pays the interest on while you're in school. There's an unsubsidized loan, which is the classic loan that you think of. There's a Parent Plus loan that parents are able to take out to bridge the gap. But that's money you're also going to need to pay back. So you can sort of think of those two things together as your net price, how much you will actually pay. But then there's grants and scholarships, right? So things such as merit scholarships based upon what you've done already, institutional grants, money that you don't have to pay back, Pell Grants, which is something from the federal government, another type of grants. We'll walk through all these things in the next couple slides, but this is something to imagine when you're thinking of the price of an institution, right? You're not necessarily going to pay the whole sticker price. It's going to be broken down into a couple different parts. Not all these parts will apply to all colleges or universities, but a lot of them will be very similar in the way they set up. So first types of aid that we're going to dive into are grants and scholarships, right? So grants are money that is set aside, sometimes by the federal government, sometimes by different organizations with a specific purpose. But it's money that you don't have to pay back, right? Usually as long as you're in good academic standing, it's not something that they'll be looking for on the other side, right? So there's federal grants, which are you apply through when you fill out the FAFSA. That's the reason for it, that the federal government pays. Sometimes there's state grants. You should check in your state agencies, see if you can move your state grants outside of your state. There's a bunch of different ways that grant money will come in, but you usually see it. And when you see grants, you know that's the money that you don't have to pay back. There's also institutional grants that come directly from the university. And when we dive directly into the micro scholarships later, you'll get into an idea of how those fit into financial aid. Scholarships are available at some institutions, some they're not. That's why you always have to check with the financial aid department. And that's usually money that you don't have to pay back as well. A lot of times there'll be merit-based funds, so they're based on something that you've done or something that you've accomplished. There's a couple of websites to look them up, and definitely apply to a lot of different things, because the more money that you don't have to pay back, the better at the end of the day. Then loans, right? So as I was talking about before, there's different types of loans, but the general concept of a loan is somebody gives you money in the right here and right now, and then you're going to pay them back later, right? So the three that you'll usually see are the direct subsidized loan. That's where the federal government, it's a loan that you are eligible to take out in your own name, and you don't really have to go through a credit check or anything of that nature, and you usually have to show a financial need for a subsidized loan. They pay the interest while you're in college, and then when you come out, usually about 6 months after, you're going to have to start paying them back. Then there's the unsubsidized loan, in which they don't pay the interest while you're in college. And that's something as well you can take out in your name, regardless of your credit score. And that does gain interest while you're in college, but you're still you're gonna have to pay that back as well in a similar way. Then there's also direct plus loans, or a parent plus loan, as you may know it as, and that's also a federal loan, but it's in your parent or guardian's name, and that usually bridges the gap between how much is left over. Another thing you might see on your financial aid breakdown or letter is federal work study. So basically what happens is the federal government will fund some part-time work programs. So you may see this in your application, in your financial aid letter or award. So this is something where you have to go, you work the hours, you apply for the job, and the federal government pays you. It usually goes directly to your bank account, and you can choose to use that in a whole bunch of things, but it is for some people use it for books, some people use it for room and board, tuition. It can apply to a lot of different things. There's also on-campus jobs too that are not work study. So if you don't qualify for federal work study, because a lot of times it is a type of aid, you can look for those as well. Another type of aid that you might see are payment plans. Different schools do this in different ways, and sometimes you can break up the payment for a semester or for a year in more manageable chunks, right? Sometimes there is a fee. The one that we have does have a fee, something like $45 for the semester, but you're able to split it up over different month payments. So depending, when you sit down and have these conversations with your counselor or your family, you can ask sort of, hey, like, I know that right at the beginning, this is too much to pay in a month, but could we pay it over 3 months, right? This is definitely something that you should take into consideration when you're considering different ways to pay for your education. Okay, so we wanted to provide you too with a couple questions to ask an admissions counselor, someone on this call, right? Does the institution meet full need, right? If I'm gonna demonstrate that I need a certain amount, are you gonna hit that? Is need considered when making admissions decisions? Some places are need blind, some places will take your need into account, and depending on where you sit on the financial aid spectrum, that may change how you approach the process. Does my financial aid package stay the same each year? Some financial aid packages are just for the first year, and then after that you have to figure it out. Some are that number for all 4 years, regardless of how your income changes, and some change every year. So it's definitely something to think about and to know. Does it change for early decision, early action, regular decision, early admission, any of those things, right? Different places will do it differently. So when you're thinking of application plans, definitely try to keep in mind what that does to your financial aid. And does the college offer merit-based scholarships, need-based grants? What is the package made out of? Because you know what each of these different things are, all packages are not the same from all schools. So you'll be able to compare them a little bit better when you know what your financial aid package will be made out of. Questions to ask your high school counselor, right? You want to use as many resources as you can when you're considering financial aid. So you want to ask the admissions officers, you want to ask your high school counselors, you want to ask yourself some questions, which we'll dive into. But does your high school offer assistance with applying for financial aid? Sometimes there's a bunch of services that different places will have that you wouldn't know about until you ask. Make sure you try to meet as early as possible with your counselor to discuss these different things, right? Caseloads build up. There's a lot of students who are all going to be talking right at the deadline, but if you have all these things smoothed out beforehand, you're ready if anything pops up. And also it's a lot less stressful for you and a lot less stressful for your counselor. Talk about financial fit for different universities. A lot of times there's a lot of different things you're thinking about, right? Where the university is, what programs they offer, but how you fit in financially or how you're able to pay for the education is a big one as well. So make sure you have these conversations where you can. Are there any scholarships that you could apply for? What documents are you going to need from the school? All these things are things you should ask your high school counselor. And then questions to ask yourself, right? Ask yourself, ask your family, all these kind of things. Make sure, we talked about before, your timeline, like what is the timeline? What are you looking for ultimately? Have I applied to everything I can for financial aid resources? Who can I ask for help? Make sure you go out, call these different people. Make sure you have a document, right? A calendar helps, something you can use a Google Sheet, you can use any planner that you want. Keep these deadlines and things in order. And then what's the return on my investment, right? You have to think of this as an investment. You're paying a certain amount of money to get something back, right? So what will I have to borrow? What will I have to pay back? How much money am I going to make, right? On the other side, what are my career outcomes? All these things play into deciding whether something is worth it or not. So these are things that you should definitely check out. So ultimately, there's a very quick overview of financial aid. I know there's a lot of information there, but as we said before, make sure you reach out and you talk to different people when you try to figure out what the best financial aid options are for you and your family.
Great, thank you so much, Shannon. So we'll move into the next section of the presentation, which is really an overview of microscholarships. One parent asked in the Q&A, how can I figure out what financial aid will be available to my student before they apply if the FAFSA isn't even able to be completed until October? And the answer is that you can ask your student to create a profile in microscholarship, a profile in RaiseMe, and earn microscholarships that represent a preview of that financial aid. So that's why we're going to be talking about microscholarships today. And of course, to answer another element of your question, do complete the FAFSA as early as possible so you can have that processed and have that information back from the college as early as possible. So what are microscholarships? Microscholarships are a new approach to aid and scholarships. They really represent the minimum amount that a student can expect to receive from a college partner like Carnegie Mellon that they're following on RaiseMe. And microscholarships are incremental commitments of scholarships. And they're awarded on the RaiseMe platform for achievements in the classroom and in the community. And as these microscholarships appear in students' profiles, the sum of them, again, represent a preview of the minimum amount of aid or scholarships from the institutions that they're following on RaiseMe that a student would be guaranteed to receive should they ultimately enroll at that institution. So all microscholarships are institution specific. They all have different requirements. Some require that you live in a certain state. Some require that you have a certain income status. Some require that you have a minimum GPA in order to be eligible for them. And those requirements are really in place so that these microscholarships do a good job of mirroring exactly what our college partners' philosophy and structure is in the realm of scholarships and aid. So this is just a representation here of the types of activities that you as a high school student or as a community college student could be awarded for in microscholarships: earning an A in a course, visiting campus virtually or in person, or taking on a leadership activity like yearbook editor. And so you'll be getting that preview starting in the 9th grade all the way up until your point of application. We can see here a sample high school student, and the premise here on the left-hand side is that you're entering your achievements, your grades, and this really helps you keep track of what you've done in high school. And as you are earning microscholarships here on the right-hand side of the screen, you get a sense of the qualities and the achievements that colleges look for in their applicants. And you're able to really discover colleges that are the right fit for you. Use our search recommendation engine, filter for colleges in your state or out of state, and find the fit that matches what you're looking for in a higher education. Just a quick plug from the voices of our own student users. We partnered with Summit Public Schools to do a survey of how students like you are using microscholarships. About 70% reported that using RaiseMe helped them understand what it took to be accepted to the colleges of their choice, and to earn scholarships in the process, keeping people on track and motivated. 71.7% said that the microscholarships encouraged them to challenge themselves, taking rigorous courses. And we know that the more you prepare academically for college, the clearer your path to affordability. And then also 78% said that RaiseMe gave them a better understanding of how grades and extracurriculars affect acceptance to college. And that can help you, again, end up with the right college choice for you. So just a few more quotations before I turn it over to my college partners. Again, our students are reporting back that microscholarships can open doors for younger students. So spread the word if you're in 9th grade to your friends. Also 10th graders, that's a great time to join. Tell your younger siblings. Again, we're seeing from students, Adam reported back that earning microscholarships really showed him that his hard work was paying off. Carlos from Texas explained that there was an incentive to work harder because of microscholarships. And Brianna from Florida explained that college seems affordable with RaiseMe and your college ambitions are within reach. So all of this good stuff is here waiting for you. I definitely encourage you to make sure that your RaiseMe profile is up to date as you head back into the school year. I did want to address quickly just a few commonly asked questions about microscholarships. The first is, if I earn microscholarships, do I still have to apply to that college? Yes, you must apply and be admitted to the colleges that you're following in order to redeem those microscholarships. And if you're earning a lot of microscholarships to a particular college, that's a good indication that you're on track to being a competitive applicant. Some students ask me, when will I receive the microscholarship money? And so it's important to realize that microscholarships represent the guaranteed amount of institutional scholarships or grants, aid-based grants that you'll receive from these colleges that you're following only if you attend. And so really what happens is your microscholarships appear as a discount to your tuition. So when Shannon was talking about net price, your microscholarships help lower that sticker price to be closer to the net price of what you're actually going to pay. So you should look closely at your scholarship and financial aid package, and your microscholarships will be reflected in that award letter. And you can always reach out to help.raise.me if you have any questions, and we will work with our partner institutions to get you the answer. And one thing that's important to note is that you should always complete the FAFSA and all financial aid forms like the CSS, because again, the microscholarships represent the minimum that you're guaranteed to receive, but you could receive more depending on the information that you enter into the FAFSA. And one final clarification, if you receive an institutional grant from a partner institution, say that is worth $10,000 a year, and you've earned $7,000 a year on RaiseMe in microscholarships from that institutional, from that college partner, then the $7,000 from the college partner earned on RaiseMe will be included in that overall $10,000 grant awarded by the university. And then many students ask me if there's a mobile app, and we do have an iOS app. Unfortunately, we don't have an Android app yet, but I can chat or question if you would be in favor of an Android app so I can let our product team know. And then many students also are wondering, until what date can they earn microscholarships? There is a deadline, an earning deadline that's dependent on the parameters of each college's program. So the earning deadline differs by college. Most of them are in the fall in your senior year of high school or in your second to last semester at community college. And so what you'll want to do is keep your profile up to date. You can always enter in achievements from the past. So if you're in 10th grade, you can enter in activities from 9th grade and still get credit. But once you hit that senior earning deadline, your microscholarships are frozen and locked in and then sent to our partner institutions so that they can make sure that amount is reflected in your financial aid package. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to our college partner panelists to introduce themselves. First up, we have Shannon from Carnegie Mellon.
Hello again, everybody. Like I said before, my name is Shannon. I'm from Carnegie Mellon. Just to give you a brief overview of the university, right? We're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where I am right now. As you can see, the sun's shining right behind me. This is not what it looks like, but not outside. We're a medium-sized research institution, right? We have about 1550 first-year students that come in. We have a lot of people from a lot of different states, a lot of different countries that come and study at Carnegie Mellon. One of the other great things about the university is we have 6 different colleges that make up the university, and each one is very unique and has a lot of really strong points. So some people know us for computer science, some people know us for engineering, some people know us for our performing arts. There's a lot of great things and great people here at the university. Always click in, learn more, give us a call at any time. I don't want to take up too much time. But that's us.
Great, and you can see that you can find Carnegie Mellon's RaiseMe profile by following the link here at the bottom of the screen. Okay, and then Clark from Franklin and Marshall.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Clark from Franklin Marshall, as it was stated. Before I talk about the college, I did want to talk about this whole financial aid process a little bit from the standpoint that there's a person, and you see the people here, they're human beings with this process. And you need to engage those. We want to be involved. We want to make the process easier because it is a personal process for you. To that end, at the college, not only is there a designated person for you in the admission office, but there's a designated director for you at the college itself. The college has been around since 1787. We have 27 athletic sports teams. 50% of our students study off campus before they graduate. 65% are involved in research. And it's in the city of Lancaster, about 60,000 people. So it's a city that's close by to Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. And so the college, as well as the area, has a lot to offer.
Great, thank you, Clark. And next up, we'll hear from Roberto at Harvey Mudd.
Hi everyone, I'm Roberto Peña. I'm an assistant director of admission here at Harvey Mudd. Quickly, right, Harvey Mudd is a small liberal arts college with a STEM focus. We're in the opposite side of Carnegie Mellon. We're in Southern California, right? And so in Claremont, California, we only have about 900 total students, right? So from our first year students up to our seniors, we have 900 students. Very mission-driven institution. We are a part of a consortium of colleges. So there are 4 other colleges that we coexist with and share resources with, including classes, including clubs, organizations. I think I want to highlight is all of our students do research here, right? We're a strictly undergraduate institution. Every student is required to do 1 year of research here on our campus, and that will manifest itself in 2 different ways. In your senior year, a capstone project known as a clinic project. It's industry sponsored. You get to work with really cool companies, or a thesis-based paper that's all your own work. And I also want to put in a quick plug for our fly-in program that we're having, our virtual fly-in program called FAST. Information can be found on our website. It's Future Achievers in Science and Technology. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Justin from University of Chicago.
Oh, it snuck up on me. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. UChicago is a mid-sized liberal arts college, so we're also another one of those liberal arts colleges. One of the things that's a little bit different about UChicago compared to many of our peers of our size is the fact that we are one college. So all of our undergraduate students are in that kind of one body, and that interconnected community across different disciplines is really big for us. That's one of the reasons that our most popular majors extend across a lot of different areas. It's also one of the reasons that we guarantee housing to our students on campus. We want to make sure that our students have a very central location and are really building that space right here in Chicago. We're also a major research university though, and have a presence on every single continent around the world. And more than 80% of our students go and participate in research, be that in Chicago or elsewhere too. So the access to those resources is something that we really encourage our students to take advantage of as well.
Excellent, great. Many opportunities for research among this group. Okay, John from Pitt.
Hi everyone, I'm John Gagola. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Programs here at Pitt. And at Pitt, we like to focus on the value of a Pitt education and a few ways that we've been recognized for our value. being named the #1 public university in the Northeast, being named the best value college, a top college that pays you back, and for the 13th consecutive year being the top value of all public colleges and universities in Pennsylvania. So a few of our initiatives that we are doing to help make everything more affordable and to help provide that value. Obviously, the micro scholarships on RaiseMe. We will also match dollar for dollar any federal Pell Grant that you are offered through the FAFSA. Our Panthers Forward program is something that helps to repay student loans for select seniors. And then our Pitt Funds Me program, which is our scholarship database containing thousands of both internal and external scholarships all in one place. If you'd like to find additional information on Pitt, you can go to admissions.pitt.edu. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Wash U.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Stewart Douglas, Associate Director in Student Financial Services. I'm going to focus more on our financial aid process and just highlight some initiatives that we've got going on at WashU. First, I'll just start out by saying that our goal is always to admit the best and brightest students, regardless of financial background. In SFS, we follow a very personalized approach. And so we have students and families work with the same SFS counselor for all 4 years that they're there at WashU. That helps us to build really close connections with our families and understand their situations. We're also committed to meeting 100% of demonstrated need for the admitted students. And that does include students that are coming through the early decision process. We also have no loan packages for our families of $75,000 or less, or those who are Pell eligible. We've got $2,000 in startup grants to help with offset the cost of books and dorms, and even to purchase a computer. And for students that are in that income category that are Missouri and Southern Illinois residents, we also will provide them with a free WashU education. So we've got a really strong supportive financial initiative program going on, and we do encourage you to check us out and take a look at us at financialaid.wusto.edu.
Thanks, Andrea. Really helpful. Okay, last but not least, my alma mater, NYU.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Moore. I'm an assistant director in the Office of Financial Aid at New York University. As you can see, NYU is obviously located in the heart of New York City. We also have 2 satellite campuses in Shanghai and Abu Dhabi. At our New York campus, we have 10 different undergraduate schools and roughly 230 areas of study, including arts and media, business, humanities and social sciences, education and health related fields, STEM. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. Within New York City, we have 2 actual campus locations. Our main campus is located in Washington Square. Our Tandon School of Engineering is located over here in Brooklyn. So we have a growing presence within New York City as well. Go on to the next slide. In terms of student support on campus in our Washington Square campus, we offer both academic support, student health center, visa support, and support for international students, wellness and exchange and counseling for all students on campus. Go ahead to the next slide. And then our Wasserman Center for Career Development is the first stop for any students interested in expanding their employment opportunities, both at NYU and beyond. For our graduating seniors, the Wasserman Center reported that 93% of students in the Washington Square campus participated in at least one internship or job. 95% of our students were employed or enrolled within a graduate school within 6 months of graduation, and the average starting salary for recent graduating class was nearly $63,000 a year. Go on to the next slide. So this slide just goes over quickly our financial aid forms and requirements. As you can see, there are separate requirements for both international students and students who are US citizens or permanent residents, and also different form requirements for the Abu Dhabi and Shanghai campuses. We recommend that all students file the CSS profile and FAFSA applications if you're interested in pursuing financial aid at NYU. And let's just go to the final slide. Thank you, Katie. So this slide just quickly goes through our deadlines. Just so you all know, our deadlines are hard deadlines. So you must submit your financial aid applications by the deadlines listed. These deadlines in the middle column for financial aid deadlines or for the CSS profile application. Our FAFSA filing does not require, there's not a required deadline, but we do recommend for ease that you file it at the same time that you file a CSS profile. And if you're selected by the College Board to file a second application for a non-custodial parent or other household member who's not part of your household, the deadline for those submissions would be 5 days after the financial aid deadline listed in the middle column. And the final column just shows you the deadlines that we would let you know in terms of your admission to NYU, be it for early decision 1 to a regular decision. Thank you so much.
Sure, great. And just to tie everything back to micro scholarships, I did want to remind everyone to make sure that their profile is up to date. The best way to see if you're eligible for any of these micro scholarship programs is to go to the account settings icon and answer all of the questions that you see there in the account settings section of your RaiseMe profile. And just to give you a quick example, we can see here what's required at NYU in order to be eligible for micro scholarships. So there is a minimum GPA for NYU's micro scholarship programs, and the program is part of NYU's Access Initiative. So students must attend a low-income high school or be part of the National School Lunch Program in order to receive those micro scholarships. And you can find more information on RaiseMe. Dennis, anything you want to add?
No, thank you so much, though. You covered it.
Okay, great. All righty, on to the Q&A. So we've gotten some great questions. I'm really excited to jump in here. I'd like to start with Andrea with one of the most popular questions. When can I start? When is it too early to file the FAFSA? Or in other words, when's the earliest that I can file it?
So the earliest that you could file your FAFSA is October 1st of your senior year. So I know that you're eagerly anticipating getting around to doing that, and it's really hard to wait. But the form does not open up or go live until October 1st, unfortunately. So definitely, look out for that deadline or that live rollout of the form. But yeah, I would encourage you, though, if you're really interested in getting a sense of your net price or, a potential package, is to check out the websites of the schools that you're considering and taking a look to see what kind of tools they have out there. So the net price calculator for sure. And there may be some other tools that schools might have available for you to do that in case you're just trying to get an estimate of what it would be.
Okay, great, thank you. John, I loved this question because, this is just the type of thing I would have loved to ask as a high schooler. What is a W-2?
Sure. So a W-2 is a tax document that you would get from your employer that lists your earnings. You would receive that for any job that you work typically. So you would receive, if you worked multiple jobs, you would receive multiple of those, and you would use those to file your taxes, which then be used on your FAFSA. It's basically showing what the income is that you earned from a particular job in that year.
Okay, great. So students might need that for themselves or for their parents.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. And then Clark, one student asked if Merit contributed to their family's EFC or estimated family contribution.
Merit could contribute to the family's contribution. It depends upon your level of financial need, which will be coming through the FAFSA, determined by the FAFSA, the profile. So in certain situations it might, in others it may not. It's really going to be a case-by-case situation. Okay.
And a kind of related question, and John, I was hoping that you could take this one too, because it might apply to Pitt. If someone is going to, quote unquote, get a free ride, then do they need to complete the FAFSA? What's the benefit there if you know a merit scholarship is coming your way?
Sure. So we always encourage our students to fill out a FAFSA, even if you don't think that you're going to qualify for any need-based aid. We definitely encourage it, at least for that first year. And the reason being that you can receive any aid up to your cost of attendance. So that goes above and beyond just tuition. It's tuition, it's room and board, it's mandatory fees, some other non-direct expenses for additional food options, some travel, things like that. All gets calculated into your cost of attendance. And so you can receive these other scholarships or other grants up to that cost of attendance for most schools. And so even if you do have a full ride, to quote, for your tuition, you can still use that funding for other expenses that you have, both direct and indirect.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful. And Roberto, I thought this was a great question too. How many times do you have to complete the FAFSA? What should I expect after I submit it once?
Sorry, from my understanding, you just have to fill it out once and you get to choose what schools you want to submit it to. Same thing with the CSS profile. I'm a little less versed in the CSS profile, so I think as our colleagues as Shannon was talking about, like we always have, learning to do on our end as well, right? But from my understanding, you submit it to the colleges that you're applying to as well.
And what about in subsequent years as you head into your second year at college or your third year at college?
Right. I mean, you update the information that's required. I mean, there's tax information and other things that you update, and I think there's going to be a lot of questions about that given the sudden changes that have happened with COVID-19, right? But reach out to your respective financial aid offices and, have those conversations with them as they can guide you in terms of what changes will happen with financial aid. Absolutely.
Yeah, it never hurts to ask to get that clarification. And then Shannon, I thought you could help us with this one. We have some students who are not American citizens. They're wondering what forms do they need to fill out if they're not eligible to complete the FAFSA? And kind of in the same vein, can you talk through how you advise international students if they are considering taking out loans?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. But some of my other colleagues might be able to speak to it a little bit better. This is another one of those things that depends school to school. For us, unfortunately, for the large majority of international students, we don't have aid. Ours is a need-based aid program for domestic students, and that's dependent on your citizenship status. There are certain cases where there are certain students who aren't technically U.S. Citizens, but maybe DACA recipients or something of that nature. And in those cases, just reach out to the different financial aid offices. Everybody will do it a little bit differently. So it's definitely something to look out for. And in general, when applying to loans, there are some loans that each school is going to say like, hey, here's something that we might be able to help you with, or here's a direction to go in. But you can always also, if you have good connections with a bank, your family's been banking at the same place for a while, or different institutions, you can check there as well, because the school loan isn't always the best loan. So you have to shop around just like you would for any other loan. But that's from CMU and the way to think about it for us.
Okay, thanks. Dennis, I know you work with a big international population. Is there anything you would want to add there?
Sure. For our purposes, we will review the CSS profile for international student applicants that are interested in applying for need-based grants and scholarships from NYU. So any international students that are interested in applying would just have to meet our same filing deadlines for the CSS profile, depending on whether they apply early decision or regular decision. We don't really have any sort of things that we can kind of talk through it in terms of loan offerings with students, but there are a number of private loans available that are out there, and some of which do lend to international students. So that is another option that you could look into if you're trying to figure out a way to bridge a gap between scholarship or your cost of attendance.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to add things? Yes, please.
Hey, this is Clark. I just wanted to add that sometimes the student is a citizen, but one of the parents may not be a citizen, and the FAFSA can still be completed. It's just that the parent would put in zeros where it asks for a parent's social security number. So there are various combinations when people say international. And again, the FAFSA can be completed if the student's a citizen, or if maybe one of the parents or both parents are not. The FAFSA can be completed. It'd just be that the parents would list their zeros where it asks for social security numbers.
Okay, great. That's a really good tip. Thank you. Let's see, Justin, we had a lot of questions around folks coming from single parent families or kind of other changes in your family situation. So if a parent is recently divorced, a parent has recently passed away, how are those family makeups taken into consideration when applying for financial aid?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is something that we see a lot. This is something that will depend school to school. Some schools will only require the custodial parents' information. That's what my school does. Other schools will require the non-custodial forms if at all possible. In those situations, you'll have a separate form or document that you need to submit usually via the CSS profile, or you will need to ask the school for a waiver. Regardless, that is absolutely a conversation that you should be having with individual schools, because that's really where you start to get in the weeds with a lot of the kind of financial aid conversations when that happens. When in doubt, provide everything that that you do have. So in cases like a very recent divorce or anything like that, you will still provide what is asked for. And then afterwards, you might have conversations with the financial aid office to adjust those if that is something that the school is willing to do.
Okay, got it. That's helpful. And so for Dennis, you mentioned that sometimes non-custodial guardians are requested to complete forms. So it sounds like if you had a question about that for NYU, for example, you could reach out to someone like Dennis in Dennis's office and understand what's required. If you're most of the time living with your dad, then your dad is most likely your custodial parent. But as Dennis said earlier, you might have forms that your mom would have to report as well. Is that right, Dennis?
Yeah, that's correct. And in terms of the FAFSA, so the FAFSA was really just looking at the custodial parent that you live with, so biological adoptive parent that lives in the same household as you. That's the only parent that you would put on the FAFSA application. For the CSS profile, it will ask a little bit more detailed questions when you're going through the application process and just kind of gauge, what's the situation with your household. For NYU's purposes, any student that has a biological or adoptive parent that lives outside of what we would call their custodial parent household, they would also be requested to complete a CSS profile application that would also capture their household's information as well. And then we also do offer a waiver process for students that cannot, or have contact with the non-custodial parent or don't know the identity of the non-custodial parent. So we do have a form by which you can, just provide that information to us. It's required at the same time as we would require the non-custodial household financial data. And so then we review that instead of the second CSS profile application.
Okay, got it. Thank you. John, this is a pretty, buckle up for this one. This one I think falls squarely in financial aid, but does financial aid after you complete the FAFSA or micro scholarships in the form of financial aid, will those cover the cost of housing?
It usually depends from school to school, but at Pitt, for example, they definitely can. Yes, we account for all scholarships and grants, primarily, again, within the cost of attendance that I was talking about earlier. There are some, depending, that may be tuition only, depending on what you're receiving, but as a whole, at least at Pitt and for at least some other schools, you can use scholarships and grants to put towards tuition or housing or some other expenses.
Okay, great, thank you. Andrea, I think this is a really important one, and maybe you can speak from the financial aid lens, and then I can ask someone who works in admissions. But the question is, will completing the FAFSA have a negative effect on my chances of admissions?
No, I would say that the completion of your FAFSA generally won't have a negative effect on your chances for admission. There are a fair number of schools that are need blind, and so that's something that, in terms of whatever your demonstrated need is, It's something that is not necessarily factored in for the most part when it comes to admission decisions, and even schools that are need aware like ours. The vast majority of the admission decisions that are being made, it's something that is important, but it's really not factored in until once we get towards the end of a cycle. And, you know, we're evaluating where we are budget wise. That's where maybe that does get considered. And so what I will say is that in my opinion, it doesn't hurt at all. I think it would hurt you more perhaps if you didn't, if you put yourself sort of in a hairy situation with the school, if your profile is one where you should be applying for aid based upon income and assets, and then you don't, and then later on you're admitted, and then you decide to submit a request for aid, then it's not necessarily looked at as nicely as it would have been if you'd done it on the front end. So I always advise families, students, submit the FAFSA and just see where things are. But I think it's going to bode well for you more to do so than not to.
Okay, helpful. Thank you. And I think that's a great point. Colleges are here to be your partner in getting to that institution and affording that institution. So just as Andrea said, you want to provide all the information so they can be that partner in that process. Shannon, this is a definite admissions question. What is super scoring, and will I be able to take the SAT this year?
Yeah, so obviously say for all these, everybody does it a little differently. Definitely for this year, check in with different schools. I know a lot of schools are taking a test optional approach, some are not. So definitely check it out. For us this year, we are going test optional for at least this year. So if you can't take your test, you don't have to. If you have taken them and you think your score represents sort of how you're doing very well, feel free to send them in. Super scoring in general is the process of sort of breaking down the test into its individual components and taking the best of them, right? So let's say you take the SAT twice and you get an 800 in your math the first time and a 500 in your English reading and writing. And the second time you take it, you get an 800 in your English reading and writing, and you get a 400 in your math. Whatever happens, sometimes, we would take both of those 800 scores and consider them as your score. That's your super score. Different places do it differently. Some only super score SAT, some do SAT and ACT, but it's really about combining different testing sittings to give you the best possible score. And yeah, check in with different places, how they do that. Okay,
great, thank you. And let's see, Clark, kind of a general question here, but are grants transferable? So if you earned a grant but wanted to transfer them to a sibling, is that possible? And in a similar vein, are they paid directly to the student or do they appear somewhere else?
Okay, well, there's various forms of grants. The one that was mentioned earlier was the federal Pell Grant, and that comes from completing the FAFSA, which is an individual application. So even though you might have twins or triplets, each student will complete their own FAFSA because it'll have an individual date of birth, which will be the same for the three of them, but it'll be individual social security numbers. Now the parent information will all remain the same. So in the case of the Pell Grant, any state grants or any institutional grants, those will be the students and they can't be transferred to a sibling. But the financial aid process does take into consideration if you have multiple students in college. So you might have a grant one year when you're only the one in college, and next year it might increase when there's two in college. So the number of students in the family, the number of family members that are attending college, the students, not the parents, but the siblings, does have an impact on financial aid eligibility.
Okay, great. And just how are grants paid out? Is that something where you would expect a check in the mail or not?
Okay. The grants typically will be appearing on your bill. You'll get a letter from the college, whether it's on a portal or a hard copy letter. I think most schools will put it electronically on a portal. They'll display all your financial aid, which will include the grants, the loans, work, scholarships, loans. And then when your bill comes, they'll appear there again for each semester. And those funds will typically be applied electronically to your account. There won't be a check that comes to you unless, as we were mentioned earlier, you might have full financial aid, which is pays for tuition and room and board, and there might be some money back for books and supplies. That might be a hard check back to you after a certain refund period. Or it could be that you're able to draw upon that to use towards books, and that's going to vary from school to school. And as you're going to hear probably throughout this presentation, and again, it depends. It depends upon the school. It depends upon the student. So you always do want to ask the questions.
Okay, great. One question that's popping up, and I think it's worth spending a little more time on, Dennis, can you explain what the CSS profile is and why it's important?
Sure. So the CSS profile is a financial aid application that's developed by the College Board, which is the same company that develops the SAT and the AP test. So what it does is it gives schools a little bit of a more comprehensive view of a family's finances and their financial strength. FAFSA gives sort of just basic information in terms of the tax income information that you have from 2 years previously, also some basic asset information that's kind of grouped into really large buckets. So in some cases, it might be helpful to a school to be able to see, how that breaks down across assets. It also, as I said, mentioned earlier, the FAFSA only takes into account your custodial parent household. So it's really just looking at your immediate household. The CSS profile also looks at any non-custodial parent household information in the same way that it looks at the custodial parent's information. And then there's just like a few, specific differences. Like one of the major ones is that the CSS profile would look at your primary home residence value as part of the assets that are reported. But each individual school that uses the CSS profile has their own way of using it. They're also able to customize questions. So questions that you may get asked on the application may be just for one specific school that you listed when you listed at the beginning of the application all the schools that you wanted to send your information to. So there are some more specific nuances to it that kind of separate it from the FAFSA. It also does require a filing fee to file the application. The application costs $25 for the first school that you send to and $16 for each additional school. So that's basically sums it up, I think.
Okay, great. So it's required for many of the institutions that are on the panel today. In fact, I think every institution except for Pitt, and it essentially is additional information that's not captured in the FAFSA.
Right, and one thing I should add, I forgot to mention, if you based on the application, that when you're completing it, the College Board does review for a fee waiver to see if you're eligible for that based off of the financial information that you provide. So if you are eligible for a fee waiver to submit the application, because you're low income, the application will let you know by the time you get to the payment section if you qualify, and then it will require a credit card payment.
Okay, great, thank you. So we are getting a lot of questions about individual programs. I would encourage you to take a look at the college's websites to learn a little bit about the academic programs offered. I'll make sure to circulate these questions to the panelists so that if there's a chance that our panelists can reach out to you individually, if you shared your name, they will try to do that. I'm sure that Carnegie Mellon does have a great pre-med track, and so I think there are a few questions like that you'll have to do a little bit of research on your own to discover. To close this out, well, I guess what I'll say is I'm going to close this out for the majority of attendees, but we'll stay on to answer a few more questions if you guys have time to stay on, if you as students and parents and attendees have times to stay on. But the question is, how early can I apply for college? And let's see, I think Shannon, I'll punt that one to you. When can you start applying for college?
Yeah, so once again, every college does it a little bit differently depending on what app they have. For us, we're a common application only school. There's a handful of really big apps that you can use to apply to a bunch of different schools, but schools also sometimes have their own apps. As soon as the application opens, you can start working on it. different schools have different admissions processes. So some are rolling admission, where as they're getting applications, they're reviewing them. Some have a sort of deadline like us. So we don't start looking at applications until after the deadline's over, and depends on which application plan you are going through. But I would definitely say that a lot of the applications are very similar year to year. So you can start looking at them now, you can start looking at them this year. And then when they officially open for that year, for the common applications, it's in August, then you can actually start filling them out. So it's never too early to start looking. And then once the application officially opens, then you can start filling it out right away, especially if you know it's someplace that you're gonna want to submit to. And you can save your progress, and you can sort of take a little while, show it to different people in order to facilitate your application filling out process.
Great. That's really helpful. And I think that one theme that's come up over and over again is that there's a lot to keep track of. And someone asked, what's the best system for organization? I think really whatever works for you. I know that in preparing for this call, many of the panelists talked about keeping a Google spreadsheet active with different deadlines and dates, making yourself a checklist that you could share with your school counselor, you could share with your parents. Are there any tips from the panelists around organization that you want to chime in with as we round out the hour?
Katie, I'll take that. I agree with the Google Sheet. I would also say that recognize this is a partnership. So try to involve your parents, family members as much as possible, because sometimes things might be new to you, and a team can do things better sometimes than an individual. So I would say organize your team, but also the Google Sheet will definitely be helpful, because you can have multiple people looking at that at the same time. So that would just be my words of advice.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have some really interesting questions still coming in. I'm going to keep reporting these back to the panelists for the next 15 minutes or so. So please continue to tune in if you can, and we'll keep going till about 20 past the hour. So just to address two things quickly about RaiseMe specifically, a question was asked, is basically your micro scholarship a discount on your tuition? And the answer is yes. That is the simplest way to think about it. Your micro scholarships are translated to a discount, and that discount is reflected in the package that you receive from the institution you ultimately attend. Another person asked about why the GPA in RaiseMe appears a little bit differently than the GPA on her transcript. And specifically, her school does not offer A pluses or A minuses. There's just an A, B, C, D, F grade. That probably is not affecting the GPA that you see on RaiseMe that much. I would just enter the A as you're awarded an A, the B as you're awarded a B. But really what is different in the RaiseMe experience is that your GPA is recalculated as an unweighted GPA, so that everyone is on the same scale, because high schools have so many different scales for GPA. Rest assured that each college takes a really rigorous look at your individual high school's grading scale when they're evaluating admission. And of course, your financial need has nothing to do with your GPA. Anyone else want to chime in on that in the panel? Okay. John, can I ask you quickly about if your parents filed for an extension to complete their taxes this year, is that going to affect a student's ability to complete the FAFSA?
Generally speaking, no, it should not. Colleges handle it a little bit differently. I'll say from the experiences that I've had, you're able to submit the FAFSA. You can either wait, depending on how long that is, for the, actually, excuse me, let me reset here. If you're filing the extension on the taxes for this current year and you're a senior, that wouldn't impact you regardless, because you're using the previous year's taxes. So generally speaking, unless you have a significant extension that takes a significant amount of time to really process, it is typically is not going to be impacting what you're able to do for the FAFSA. If for some reason it is going to take that long through various reasons that could be happening, you are able to generally submit the FAFSA and update as necessary. That's the experience that I've had, and I'd be interested if any other panelists had anything to add to that as well.
Clark, what do you think?
Well, as John was saying, if you're a senior, we're going to be looking at your 2019 tax return. So with the delay in the tax return this year for 2019, it was delayed to July 15th, and then there could be an extension beyond that, which if you're trying to get the FAFSA completed October 1st, it could be a problem if you're extending the 2019 tax return. So I think all of us would say, try to get it done as quickly as possible. So it's in the system. So something that was mentioned in the beginning, I think Shannon mentioned about the IRS data retrieval process to populate the FAFSA, which is the way you want to go. So sometimes it's not you wanting to get the extension, it's the accountant trying to buy some time, and they're busy. It's not as if you haven't given them the information. So I think we'd all agree, get your tax return done now, get it in the system, the IRS, so that you can use the IRS data retrieval process to populate the FAFSA for this upcoming cycle.
Really good point. So if your parents applied for an extension to October, have them go ahead and complete it now. If you're going into the 12th grade year, you can complete the FAFSA after October, although it's earlier, it's better to do it as early as possible. But if you have to complete it in December, that's definitely better than not completing it at all. Roberto, question for you. Is this a good year to take a gap year? Why or why not? I'm getting this question a lot because of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I think what all of our colleges are wishing for you is to stay safe and healthy through all these times. There is a lot of uncertainty. I think that's happening on both kind of the college's side and the prospective student side. So I think really seeing it through that lens right now as prospective students, right? If you're a rising senior and you can't visit these campuses, there's other ways to engage with us for now. I think it really depends on your situation and what you end up doing. I think it really varies from situation to situation, right? Like I think in my own personal case, a year off before going to school I would probably been more focused in school, right? And that's my situation. If you're gonna, I think we're very limited by what we can do in terms of experience. Some students take a year off to go travel somewhere, to go visit other places. That's a little more limited now, right? The reality of kind of what's going on in the world is that. So I think it really varies on your situation. Some students are also concerned about if the FERS are gonna affect their like admissions plan for the following year. And to be quite upfront and sincere with you, that's something that you as a prospective senior don't have control over, right? And so it might limit the spaces that are available for each college, but that will vary in terms of what colleges will do. So if it works for you, do it. If not, I think roll with the punches and kind of just be patient because we're figuring it out as you guys are as well.
Great answer. Okay, thanks. We have a question that kind of cuts both ways. Justin, this is ultimately going to go to you. The first part is, if I am an American citizen and looking at some institutions on the RaiseMe profile that are located in Italy or England, is the microscholarship process different? The answer is no. The microscholarships apply the same to those international schools the way that they apply to the American institutions you see represented here on the call. However, you may pay a different tuition as an American attending a college located in the UK, for example. So that's a great question that you can reach out to their admissions office for answers on. The more popular question though, Justin, is, does my citizenship as an American or not an American citizen affect my chances of admission?
Well, that is another thing that is going to change a lot from institution to institution. The general answer is no, not inherently, but it really depends upon what sorts of financing there is available to students, what sort of policies different schools might have as far as being sure that families can afford to pay or whatever the case might be. This is one place that you'll hear schools might differ between being need blind versus need aware. So for example, UChicago is need blind for US citizens, but need aware for international students. So that's making sure that that is what Andrea was talking about earlier, where your financial aid application may impact your admissions decision. So that is a common split that you may see, and it's just another piece of the application. So it's just more information that admissions office is taking into account. Again, not necessarily a positive or a negative as far as kind of chances of admission might be.
Okay, great, thank you. And Clark, back to you for this one because it's important. Can I complete the FAFSA if both my parents are immigrants?
Yes, you can complete the FAFSA if you're a citizen or an eligible non-citizen. And I would also say it doesn't depend upon your parents' status, it depends upon your status.
Okay.
Also, if you are a DACA student, you do have a social security number, and some schools in their process might say complete the FAFSA. So even though you're DACA and not eligible for federal financial aid, you can still complete the FAFSA and let the information go electronically to the school. So you may not be eligible, you won't be eligible for federal financial aid, but it may be a process that some schools use. And you're hearing from everybody, it depends, it depends upon the school. Just with this process, if you have questions, and it goes back to trying to make life easier for yourself, there's nothing wrong in sending an email to 10 different schools with the same question. You know, so don't send 10, I should say send one email to 10 different schools. You know, copy us all, get responses back. So make it easier on yourself. When you have these questions and you're hearing that it depends upon the school, just put in the email address for all the schools and send the same question, because it's not going to hurt your chance of admission or financial aid if we get an email that lists 10 other schools. You're trying to do what's best for you and what's most efficient.
That's really important. It's so critical to be an advocate for yourself and get the questions answered that you need to make informed decisions in this process, because attending college is expensive in terms of the time that it takes, in terms of the money out of your pocket or your parents' pocket, and you want to make sure that you're going in with your eyes wide open. Andrea, question on whether expenses are taken into account in determining a family's estimated family contribution. For example, if a parent is paying back student loans themselves.
So what I can say is that that is something that is taken into consideration through at our school in terms of a professional judgment. It's something that isn't automatically included in the calculation, but we have a process in place where we allow students and their families to provide us with special circumstances. And that would be something that we would definitely take under consideration. So costs like that or expenses like that that are deemed pretty much like non-discretionary items. Another example of that would be if there's elder care, if your family's supporting an elderly member of your family, someone that's not in your household, but someone outside the household, but yet it's still impacting your family's budget. That's something that we definitely would also take into consideration. So I would encourage students to take a look at the websites, the financial aid websites of the schools that you're considering, and just take a look to see if they have any special instructions or if there's a process involved with providing special circumstances. Certainly, there's an opportunity to share that information on the CSS profile if your school that you're considering is a profile school. But in case you missed that opportunity to do that, there's always a way to do it through another means, via email, or maybe there's a designated form that the schools have. But certainly you want to make sure that those schools are aware of that type of information.
Okay, great. Thank you. And John, another student asked if there is such a thing as a practice SAT. Is there? I mean, sorry, a practice FAFSA, wrong word, a practice FAFSA.
You can definitely access different aspects of the FAFSA online that you can see what kind of questions they're going to be asking and be able to get that information ahead of time. So in a way you have a practice in doing it that way, but I would recommend that when you actually do submit your FAFSA that you submit it with the actual information, that you don't treat it as necessarily a practice. While you can go in and update information as needed, I would treat it when you go to do the actual FAFSA as your official submission, not as a practice.
Okay, great, thank you. And Roberto, another student asked, for colleges who are test optional this cycle, will a student who does submit test scores be considered more favorably versus a student who does not?
That's a great question, and also prime my other colleagues here as well. This is the first year that MUD is doing test optional, and we're doing it for a couple of years. And I would say no, that's the whole point of test optional is if you, I mean, part of it is we're considering what's going on again with COVID and the fact that not everyone has the ability to take SATs, right, or ACTs or testing. But we will not, we will review you with what you have available. And I think, my colleagues can join us as well, but fit will play an important role in you getting to know who we are, and we do a good job at evaluating you with everything that we require, right? Like I think every college will have different requirements in terms of essays, letters of recommendations from different people, right? And so we use all of this information to assess who you are and how you fit into our individual campuses. But we will not dock you for not having the test scores, and we will not, give you more points for having them. Right? That's why it's test optional. We will review you with what you submit to us.
Okay, and so if you submitted a test score in the past, that could be part of your file if it's already on record?
If you tell us that you want us to consider the testing, we will. And if it's something that you submitted in the past and you don't want us to consider it, we will review you without the test score.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're getting a lot of questions about being able to reach out to institutions individually. I know all of the panelists here, their admissions offices have a generic admissions at or admission at or info at that's available on their website. So if you do have questions about whether a college accepts AP scores, for example, about specific programs for study, then please do go ahead and email that generic email address, and somebody will direct you to the person in the admissions office who can help you with your question. Many of these admissions offices are organized by geographic region, so you'll want to be paired up with a counselor who represents your area of the country. Just a couple of final points here. Students are asking about community service, and given that community service is difficult to complete during COVID-19, will that still be considered as part of the admissions process? I just want to point out that there are a lot of virtual community service opportunities that are highlighted on the RaiseMe blog, and you can still earn a micro scholarship for completing some of those virtual community service opportunities. Shannon, do you have any thoughts on that particular one?
Yeah, so one thing that you have to realize about college admissions is for a lot of us, the context of each individual student matters, right? So we're not reading, like I will never read it. I read a lot of applications every year, and I never take one student and put them up against another student. That's just not how our process works, right? I'm looking at what was available to a student, sort of what they had access to, and anything along those lines. So if you really couldn't go out, or it was unsafe even, like not even like you couldn't, like someone was barring your door, but like if it's unsafe to go out and do these different things that you would have normally done, that's fine. You can put a sentence in the little additional information section. Chances are if I see that you've been doing service every year and then this year you're not, I'm going to understand, right? My work life has been impacted by COVID, and we understand, I think we all understand that students' lives will be impacted as well. So we're going to read applications a little differently, more than likely, than we've read them in the past, but it's all based upon the student and the information the student gives us and what's been available to them. So I wouldn't super stress about if it's a little bit different than what it would look like last year or what it'll look like 2 years from now. I think the priority is staying safe and healthy during this time.
Absolutely. And I know that we've talked a lot about policies differing from institution to institution, but Shannon, while we're with you, can you just speak about the difference between test optional and test blind?
Yeah, so some I could go on for hours about this, but some schools don't want to see your tests, right? They feel like through their process, it's not important. Some schools are saying, we think it is a good indicator or an additional point in the cloud of points that we use to see how you are as a student or an individual. So usually when somebody says they're test optional, that means like if you really like your score, you think your score is solid and it represents you, or you think it adds something to your application, then you can send it. And if you don't think those things, then you don't have to send it. Some schools will be, they'll say you can send it if you want, you can spend however much money it is to send it over, but we're not going to look at it at all. And there will be schools too that say, we still want to see tests this year. So definitely look at these individual schools, look on their websites, give them a call, send them an email to double check, because everybody reads applications and a little bit differently.
Okay, great. Dennis, I'm going to round out with you with two kind of yes or no questions, but make of them what you will. One is, are transfer students eligible for financial aid? And will my ethnicity or my parents' ethnicity affect the financial aid I receive?
I could answer the second question for sure is a no. The first question is yes, transfer students are eligible for types of financial aid, depending on the type of transfer student you are, or if you are in a specific program, because we have a couple of transfer specific programs. So among those options, the eligibility for financial aid may vary. So I would check back with us again, probably within like a month or two.
Okay, got it. So the transfer student aid process might be a little bit different, it sounds like. Anything else that folks want to add about transfer students? I think we did have about 5% or so of the audience is community college students. Okay. I think we'll just round out with a check-in with the panelists. Anything else that you wanted to add in today's session that wasn't covered?
This is Clark from Franklin Marshall. I just wanted to say something that Shannon just touched on and made me think about. Sometimes there's that cost of sending the SATs or the HCT to the school. You always want to look to see where can you save some money. So the FAFSA is free application for federal student aid. You don't need to pay any money for the application, and you shouldn't be paying anybody to help you with the process. That's free. The CSS profile, depending upon your economic background, you can get that for free in your first year. So there should be no cost there. Colleges sometimes will also waive the application fee, their application fee, based upon when you're submitting it, or there might be a question on that Common App or form. So again, another way to do it for free, looking at different schools. And then I know at F&M, we'll take self-reported scores, so you don't have to pay for those. And then if you get admitted and enrolled, then at that point in time, we'll come back and say, okay, we want the actual score. But through this whole process, where can you save money? And as I mentioned earlier, where you can save time. So those are just some things that I would touch on.
Thank you, Clark. Anyone else? Last words?
The only thing that I would add is definitely do not wait till the last minute. If you see that a school has a deadline, you may, as you're starting to fill out the forms, realize that you're missing some information. It could take a day or two possibly to get that information, depending on your situation. Some families have to go through their accountants to get answers to specific questions on the profile application or the FAFSA. So I would definitely recommend doing it early and don't wait to the last minute. You don't want to find out, on the deadline date that you have to have a whole other parent or, application submitted at that point, because it's going to be very hard for you to possibly get it in by the time that it's due. So I would definitely say don't wait till the deadline that you see, start early and get it in well before that, so that you can just allow yourself time to relax and just wait to hear what colleges you got into.
Great, good point. Well, I like the idea of ending on the theme of looking for ways to save money, planning ahead, and getting things in well before the deadline. And if you're still a little bit unsure about what the right fit college for you is, where you're going to land as you round out your high school experience, remember that RaiseMe is here to help. That's where you get to be in the driver's seat. You can click around all of these colleges' profiles, compare their popular majors, look at pictures of their campus, understand in a very visually pleasing format what the average cost is. You can have links out to the net price calculator, so you can enter in your personal information and get an estimate of price. And you get to earn micro scholarships along the way. So come back to the site, make sure your profile is complete as you head into this upcoming school year. And thank you so much for spending this time with us this evening. We really appreciate it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll be ending the webinar shortly. Thank you, everyone from our college partners. We really appreciate your joining. This has been fun, and I wish you all a safe and happy rest of the week.